Bob, of course, President Trump's lawyers are probably scurrying about at this very moment. How are they going to be involved in this investigation?
One of the unanswered questions is what steps the White House is going to take with the Attorney General Barr to raise questions of privilege. That's unanswered from my perspective. It certainly wasn't answered to my understanding clearly in the hearings with Bob Barr, but that would certainly be a point at which the White House counsel's office would raise questions about review for privilege issues.
So if you were in the White House at this moment, if you were representing the president or you were President Trump's counsel, what would you be doing?
Fundamentally, of course, if you're representing the president, you have some institutional concerns. And let me stress those would be institutional concerns. The president has a personal legal core, and their concerns are necessarily different. But from the institutional perspective as White House counsel, the sort of privilege questions that I'm raising are ones that you would definitely be wanting to ask questions about. I don't know whether a process might have already been established between the Attorney General's office and the White House counsel, some understanding, some protocol that governs what sort of access will be permitted to the White House counsel, what sort of procedure will be available for the raising of these kinds of questions. I don't know the answer to that, obviously. This is somewhat new territory, but I would have, some time ago, have wanted to enter into conversation with the Attorney General's office about what would precisely happen to enable the White House counsel to defend the president's institutional, well, let me stress that, institutional equities, not his personal defense, but his institutional equities.
Right. And of course, the White House press secretary, Sarah Sanders, says the White House has not been briefed on it. But CNN is reporting that the White House was made aware that the DOJ had the report now about an hour ago. I want to get to Craig Gordon, our Washington bureau chief. Of course, Craig, you have been waiting for this now for 22 long months. We knew that this was coming, but now that it is here, now that the report has been handed over to the Department of Justice, it is just, in many ways, the beginning. What are you watching for?
Well, we are told Attorney General William Barr may tell us as soon as this weekend, so say goodbye to this weekend, about the principal conclusions of the Mueller report. Honestly, that is much faster than we expected. We had been given some guidance from the Department of Justice that he was not going to, dawdle, that he was going to move it rather quickly in a few days, but that would be literally a day or two. So that is obviously the top concern right now. I think one of the things we'll be looking for is when does the White House find out what's in this report? Hard to imagine they will find out at exactly the same time as us, and partly for the reasons Mr. Bauer was mentioning, that they are going to be given the opportunity to assert a sort of executive privilege on some of the information. The White House actually cooperated pretty extensively with this investigation, turning over literally hundreds of thousands of pages of information. The president has a right to say, well, that's private presidential communication, therefore it shouldn't be included in the report. And I think Attorney General William Barr will give them the opportunity to do that. So we'll be looking for that. And then, of course, look, we're in a pretty remarkable moment in American history where there is now a report. We know it exists. It's been handed over to the Attorney General. The public may never see it. We may only, the statute, the law that created the job of Robert Mueller only really requires there to be a report by the Attorney General, a sort of a summary of the report, a report on the report. But the report itself may remain under lock and key for some time, perhaps permanently even. And so this will set off a pretty big scramble to try to figure out what's in there beyond what William Barr tells us possibly as early as this weekend.
Bob Bauer still with us, former legal counsel to President Obama. All of that said, Bob, once William Barr hands over the highlights to Congress, at that point, isn't it practically public? I mean, won't the information start to leak out no matter what is in the report?
I don't know that I would look with any confidence to the possibility of extensive leaks. It's certainly possible that some material will leak out. I don't know that anything approaching a full accounting of what's in the report will eventually make its way into public. But I do think what you can anticipate, especially in light of the House vote recently, which was unanimous for the full publication of the report, is that Congress, which has certainly the constitutional power to do so, will move to obtain the full Mueller report. Whatever that is, however long it is, however detailed it is very likely that in connection with congressional oversight investigations and maybe in support of its power to determine whether an impeachment inquiry is warranted, the Congress will move to obtain the report and eventually would succeed.
Craig, you know, obviously you've been covering Washington for a very long time, Craig Gordon, our Washington bureau chief, and to a certain extent, this investigation and the coverage of this investigation has been totally unprecedented for any administration. But can you just describe for us what the experience has been like for you and your team as you tried to get, you know, details on the inner workings of Mueller and his team, details on what they may or may not have, and when this may or may not be given to the DOJ? Imagine it's been just, you know, in all new territory.
Yeah, I mean, in a word, frustrating. You know, kudos to Robert Mueller and his team. They did not leak. There were, I probably could not even count on one hand the number of stories that you could trace directly back to Robert Mueller, or, you know, what you suspect maybe that was Mueller talking or his people talking. They simply took that oath of secrecy very seriously. We know Mueller himself laid down the law in the early days that they're doing a high-profile, you know, investigation up to and including the President of the United States. And so for reporters, it's been pretty slim pickings. The last few days have been interesting, shall we say. You know, we had started to get a little bit of guidance, a little bit of signaling from the Justice Department. The report could come pretty much any time this week, or maybe not, or maybe it would. So we really did have our Justice Department reporter, Chris Strom, whose terrific stories on the terminal right now, pretty much duct taped to his chair over there at the Justice Department press room, waiting for this day to come. But we literally only got minutes of notice that the report was actually coming out at, you know, roughly 5 o'clock today. So it's been a pretty amazing roller coaster, and the scary part for us journalists is we're really just getting started. You know, all we know today is that the report's been filed. We don't know a single thing that's in it, and that will be many, many weeks and months and maybe years of our careers trying to figure out what that is.